It's after 5 here, so we can, there's others, we can let them trickle in, but let's get started. Again, I'm Mark Vertucci. I'm a project manager at Fuss & O'Neill in Manchester. And you know, this is going to be our second public workshop here, so thank you all for joining us here to talk about the West Main Street Corridor Study. I think the last time we met here was back in mid-January. So we kind of introduced the project. We talked about the objectives of the project, you know, the scope and what we'd be doing, kind of got some initial feedback from everyone who was in attendance that night and what they felt were you know, issues along the corridor that we needed to address. So since then, we've done you know, quite a bit of work. We've been through our existing conditions analysis. We've done a lot of public involvement, and you know, tonight we wanted to get you up to speed and where we are with all of that, and then you know, kind of get to the fun part of the project, which is brainstorming some ideas and some solutions for how we can fix West Main Street. So I just want to go through a few, just a couple of housekeeping items on Zoom here. I'm sure most, if not all of you, if this is not your first Zoom session you've attended in the last year. But just to orient you again, in the bottom of the screen, you've got the mute and the video buttons if you'd like to talk later on when we get to that portion of the meeting. Along the bottom, there's the chat function if you want to send us a message or ask a question. And then under the reactions button there is where you can find you know, the raise hand if you want to raise your hand to ask a question, and the leave button there when it's time to exit the meeting. Hopefully we don't do that. You don't do that until we're done in the end. Moving on, let's just introduce again our project team. For those of you who weren't there the first time around, Leslie Barrowin, who's on, is our project manager from NVCOG. They are administering this study. And then along with me and our consultant team at Fuss & O'Neill, we have Matt Skelly and Catherine Patch, and you'll be hearing from them in a little bit. And our sub-consultant from FHI Studio, Francisco Gomes, is on, and you'll also be hearing from him in a little bit as well. So just recapping quick our agenda, I mentioned I'm going to just briefly review our first workshop and you know, what we talked about there, and then give a brief summary and overview of our existing conditions findings that we've been working on the past month or so. Also a brief summary, Catherine's going to give a brief summary of our public outreach efforts thus far and what we've heard from you, from the public, that are issues along the corridor. And then we're going to get into that a brainstorming session where we hope everyone can you know, participate and give us some thoughts on what you think you know, could make this roadway a safer place. And then in the end, we'll just, after the brainstorming sessions, we'll do a brief recap of for everyone and what we've heard, and we'll talk about our next steps in the schedule in this project. So quickly to recap our first workshop back on January 12th, the limits, if you weren't there, our study limits on West Main are basically from Route 8 easterly all the way to the Waterbury Green. So the westerly half of this road, west of Willow and Meadow, is a state road. It's a city maintained road east of Willow and Meadow over towards Green. So those are our limits. Basically, the background of this project, you know, West Main obviously is a major east-west corridor in the city, not only for vehicles, but also for transit and buses, or several routes along this corridor. It's a gateway to the downtown area from points west and the Route 8 Expressway. We know this road's been plagued by vehicle congestion and safety issues in certain areas that we need to mitigate. We also have a real lack of multimodal facilities on this road. There's pedestrian and bicycle amenities are lacking, transit amenities are lacking. So this is really the impetus of the study, is to look at these issues and come up with some solutions to make it better. The funding source, again, for this project is 80% federal, 10% of it is state, and then there's a 10% match that the City of Waterbury is putting up. So moving on, existing conditions. So we've done some analysis of all the the issues in this corridor, which I'll explain in a minute. But I wanted to bring up a poll question first here and ask everyone in attendance, how often or how do you most often use West Main Street? Do you live close by? You use it to access businesses or shopping or to get to restaurants? You take the bus? Is it more of a, for walking, running, or biking, or is it mainly you use it for, in a vehicle, basically to get from one place to the other? So,
Mark,
yep.
Can I chime in here just to say we're very happy for all of the folks who are joined us today, and regardless of the reason that you've signed in, we definitely encourage you to participate in the polls so we can get the data from everybody. So thank you.
Yeah. Is everybody seeing the poll on their screen? Okay, we got one there. Great.
The other, to be for full disclosure here, we wanted to make sure that we added in some interactive elements as we're going through our presentation here to make sure that folks are with us. So if we're only seeing a couple of people responding, we're going to be a little worried that there's nobody sitting there behind those names that don't have their camera turned on, which is fine. You can leave your camera turned off, but we would ask that you participate in the poll.
Yeah, we do have two more poll questions after this that we've sprinkled in, so I'll be interested to see the answers. So we've got a couple people living close by, one to access business and shopping, and then we've got for a throughway to reach another destination. As you'll be hearing a little bit later when Catherine talks about our public outreach efforts, we have a survey that's online, a couple of surveys, an interactive one, and also a Survey Monkey that has been posted in the project website. And we really, this question was asked there, pretty heavily weighted towards people using this road as a throughway to reach another destination. So we know this is a pretty auto-centric roadway. And we really need to balance the needs with this study, balance the needs of the vehicle with, pedestrians and bicyclists. So thank you for your answers here, and we'll get a summary of these posted, at the end of the presentation as well. Let's move on, Catherine. We're going to go take a look at our findings thus far on our existing conditions analysis. I'm going to give a brief overview here of what we looked at for crash history. So this is where we comb through, crash reports from the police department and from the Yukon Crash Repository. And what we found here was that actually the majority of the crashes occurred in a couple of locations on West Main Street. One problem area was this intersection in the middle of the corridor that's pretty offset. Meadow and Willow Street. We saw about 20% of the crashes there. There were 81 in a 5-year period, which is a pretty high crash rate. We also saw a fairly high number at Holmes and State Street, and also at Sperry Street, where we had about 50 crashes respectively at each of those intersections. So those are some hot spots. On the other token, we didn't see a lot of crashes on the north side of the green, and that may be a function of the road's only 2 lanes there, and there's some There's some pedestrian crossings that are well marked. That area was generally okay. But in addition to those hotspots I spoke about, we also, as many of you are aware, we had a couple of pedestrian fatalities between Willow Street and Sperry Street in that section. Both of them were involving pedestrians trying to cross the road. Not a lot of crossing opportunities there in substandard facilities. So those are areas that we're definitely going to need to look at as far as solutions go. So moving on to the next slide, traffic conditions. So, we ran a traffic model to determine where are the areas where vehicles are, getting hung up. Where's the congestion? Where is, our vehicles queuing or stacking at intersections? And what we found were the worst locations were the Watertown Avenue, Riverside Street intersection near the western end of West Main Street, closer to Route 8. Thomaston Avenue out there as well. And then Willow and Meadow Street, which I just talked about in the middle section of our study area. So those areas we're going to need to look at for potential mitigation for congestion issues. But outside of those areas, what we really saw is that much of the rest of the road actually had operated pretty well and had excess capacity. So when I say that, you look here at that picture of in the vicinity of Holmes intersection there, and we've got 6 lanes of traffic, but we really don't need that many lanes. So this is an area where, maybe we can actually road diet it or reduce the number of lanes that we have and provide some more space for other accommodations, such as maybe bus pull-offs or bicycle lanes and, shortening of pedestrian crossing. So different sections of the corridor will basically have different needs here. Some are going to need to concentrate on the traffic flow, and others we can maybe reduce to provide safer multimodal facilities or accommodations. Moving on to parking. So we did just a brief inventory of what's out there, and what we found is there is not a lot of on-street parking on the whole section of road that we're studying here. There's a little bit around the green, but I'd say only about a quarter of the green around it has on-street parking. There's not much west of there. There's a little bit more as you head west of Willow and Meadow, and then the whole western section of our corridor is cut off of this map because there's nothing to show there either. There's no parking out there. So we have a general lack of on-street parking. There's not a lot of off-street parking either. The lot there by Judd Street is about 50 some odd spaces. Other than that, there's not much for off-street public parking. There is a proposed project that the city has, and they're going to be constructing a new lot up by Prospect Street, which is that dashed area in blue. So that will have some benefit to providing some more parking in the general area of the green. So moving on to sidewalk and crossing amenities. So this is something where we found that West Main Street is really lacking. A lot of sidewalks in poor conditions and not ADA accessible ramps. We have excessive crossing widths where the road is really wide. Remember that picture I showed earlier there in the Holmes intersection area. And there's also extended areas, lengthy sections of road where we do not have any crossings. So this picture here, east of Thomaston Avenue, you see a pedestrian attempting to cross a busy road. There's a similar picture we have over by Sperry Street as well. So this is something we're going to need to look at very closely in adding more crossing areas for pedestrians. Bicycle facilities, not much to say here on West Main. The whole road is pretty much lacking. There are no bike facilities at all. No signs, no sharrows, no designated bike lanes, and certainly no separated bike lanes like what we see here on Freight Street that has been recently installed. So, you know, we have something really, really good just to the south of this corridor. So we definitely need to, you know, make this another item that we look at here in improving bicycle accommodations on West Main Street, so we can provide some connectivity for bicyclists to these nice facilities that have just been installed, you know, nearby to the south. As far as transit conditions, I'm going to turn it over to Francisco from FHI Studio, and he's going to review with you some of the things that he's found related to transit thus far, and also talk about some work he's done on a market analysis as well.
Hey, thanks, Mark. As Mark mentioned, our team, we have a couple of transit experts on staff. They took a look at the bus activity, the routes, frequency, or headways, you might call them, in the center of town. And what we see is a lot of bus activity, and I think anyone familiar with the area would recognize that. There are 8 different routes that run through and stop in the downtown, and with 12 different bus stops that they serve. And so we see significant volume of buses and of riders. There are a lot of boardings and departures from buses in proximity to the green mostly, but all along West Main Street. Next slide. And here's a map that helps to communicate what the volumes are of that activity. And the blue dots are inbound trips, so people getting on or off a bus that's headed into Waterbury. And the red dots are outbound trips, so people getting on or off a bus that's headed outbound from downtown. And the bigger the dot, the more activity there is. And so what we see is the biggest dots have more than 100 boardings or off boardings in the course of an average weekday. And we have some stops that have real high frequencies. So right along the green, at the intersection of Willow Street, and then again at State, and again west of Thompson Street. You know, I think we expected to find a lot of activity. We weren't sure exactly which stops were going to be most frequent. And so this was kind of revealing information for us. It might suggest where we should consider or concentrate transit amenities, like better bus waiting areas and shelters. And we have a little more work to do in this area, but this gives us a pretty good baseline for understanding the types of improvements that we need and the bus activity that we need to accommodate as we're planning and designing West Main Street. All right, next slide. Our team also conducted a market analysis of the downtown. And the purpose of this analysis was really to better understand what is driving trips to downtown, and maybe even what the trends are, what the future might hold for traffic downtown, and what's going to drive trips in the future based upon existing market conditions. So we did a typical market analysis that a CVS might do if they were considering locating in downtown. We know there's one there already, but they would have likely done a very comparable analysis. And that starts with the drive time analysis. So the map on the right here shows the areas that are accessible to the green within a 5, and that's the reddish brown color, a 10, that's the green color, or a 15-minute drive, and that's the blue color. That's the capture area for the market. And as you can see, it extends, the 15-minute extends pretty far out to Southbury, Plymouth, Milldale, Beacon Falls in each direction. If we go to the next slide, we'll show you what this area correlates to with respect to socioeconomic factors. So first of all, the immediate area around the downtown within that 5-minute drive really struggles economically with respect to the residents. Median household incomes and per capita incomes are very low. And the further you get away from the downtown, so the more you push into the outskirts of Waterbury itself and further into the neighborhoods along the edges and outside of Waterbury to the surrounding towns, the median incomes and per capita incomes go up. So that's where a lot of the spending potential is for any retail activity, restaurants, any other businesses that are dependent on foot traffic. Most of that spending potential is outside the immediate downtown. And if we go to the next slide, we can take a look at what those businesses look like in the downtown. So it's an even mixture and very consistent what you might expect to find in a downtown city, whether small or large. And that's a combination of restaurants and food service locations, retail and all types of retail, general merchandise, food stores, auto-oriented retail as well. So there's a pretty even mixture. And what's more interesting, if we go to the next slide, is where the spending is happening. And so most of the spending is supported by people coming from outside the immediate area. So the graph on the bottom is called a surplus leakage analysis. And everything that goes, all the bars that go to the left is surplus. That means you have sales that exceed, and in some cases greatly exceed, the demand from local residents in the downtown area. And leakage is anything that people in the local area are leaving the area to purchase. So those are the sales that are happening mostly outside the area. And the only area you have leakage is general merchandise stores, and that would be like a Walmart or Target. So the businesses, the retail activity, the service sector activity you have in the downtown is very dependent upon people from outside the downtown. And that is likely driven by people who are employed in the downtown, by your jobs. So if we go to the next slide, we can see where your concentration of jobs are. And downtown Waterbury truly is the concentration of jobs in the region. The darker the blue or purple color, the more jobs are concentrated. And they are right there around the green. Waterbury Hospital is a very big part of that, as well as all the other employers downtown, whether it be the UConn Waterbury campus, other state offices, city offices. There's a lot of activity downtown, and that's a huge component of what drives and supports the retailers in the downtown. So our takeaway from this is that it's really important that it continues to be convenient for people to get into the downtown. So while we're considering measures that will make it better for people to walk around the downtown, experience the downtown and West Main Street, we also need to be cognizant of the fact it's really important that people can get in and out, because the more delay that's introduced, let's say if we introduce 3 minutes of delay to a trip in the downtown, what we do is we shrink that 15-minute drive time area to a much smaller area, and we carve out a lot of this spending potential that's supporting some of the downtown. So it's something to be mindful of, which isn't to say it's going to just drive decision making. And I don't think we foresee any recommended changes that would really impact how easy it is to get into the downtown, how much time that takes. But that's one of the considerations here. Additionally, we want to be thinking about, where is the potential downtown? Is there a lot of vacant space that might, if occupied, would drive a lot more trips and would create more traffic? And what we see is that the downtown has about 123,000 square feet currently listed as available. And that's, once again, roughly the size of about a Walmart. So there's a decent amount of space available. Now, these numbers don't truly account for what's happening right now with respect to where people are working from and whether or not leases are going to be renewed when they come due. So there's a big question mark about what the vacancy rate in commercial office space might be a year or two or three from now when leases expire, and what those future uses might be, whether or not they're reoccupied or converted to residential or some other type of commercial use. So that's a big question mark. And so we have some factors that are a little beyond our control, but I think we need to anticipate that there'll be some shifting travel patterns in the downtown due to the vacancies that you have and pending vacancies as well. And another thing to note is that you don't have any Class A office space downtown, and this is like your grading system in school. A is the best. It's the newest, has the best HVAC and communications amenities and that sort of thing. Most of your space is B or C, and so one of the reasons being is your rental rates your lease rates are really low. So there's nothing to drive demand for the creation of new Class A office space. And so we don't foresee any big changes in that. But the one area of growth to be mindful of is medical office space, which it continues to grow through the pandemic because people are aging. There's more demand for medical care outside of a hospital setting. So that could be a potential future driver, and we're interested in having some conversations with Waterbury Hospital to see what they see down the road and whether or not they see any demand for a medical office space within our study area. And that does it for me, I believe.
Yes, thanks, Francisco.
Sure.
I'm going to talk to you guys now about the public outreach that we've done with this study, this meeting being part of that. This study has had a really, really awesome component of public outreach. It's very few of us are actually on the design team are from downtown Waterbury. And so that leaves it up to us to kind of talk to people who live and work and operate in this space to figure out what is the best method for us to kind of improve this causeway here. So hopefully neither one of these are new to anybody, but we have a project website that has been up and running since the onset of this project in the fall, which is on the left side of your screen. It's westmainstudy.com. We also have a Facebook page. Both of these have been tools that we've used throughout the project to really give the public access and kind of give them the incremental pieces as we go along and in between all of these public meetings. These are also a great place to access our interactive mapping tool, which is another thing that we've been utilizing throughout the study. It's another method that we have for public comment where you can drop a pin anywhere on the street here and you can kind of see the map faded to the back. And you can identify any of these colored blocks here. You can identify where a bus stop or shelter is in poor condition. You can identify where you might need a turn lane, where there are traffic signal problems, and on and on and on. This has been a great tool for our study team to really identify where Mark went through the existing conditions and kind of the lack of facilities or where facilities can be improved. And this has been a great tool in accounting for some of those things as well. Something else that we did as part of this study was conduct stakeholder interviews. As Francisco was saying, it's really helpful to look at this from a development side as well. We've talked to a couple developers, we've talked to the city about this, we've talked to some business owners, different priests and parishioners. We've talked to one of the bus drivers that's been going through here for 30 years. And we've gotten a lot of kind of feedback of people who travel through here every day, such as like the alignment of Meadow and Willow is askew and is dangerous and something that we are looking at as part of this study. The turn restrictions are also sometimes not adhered to if people are wondering why they're there at all. lack of enforcement on things like that. We've heard about the lack of parking. We've heard about lack of bus amenities and bike amenities to be able to get to the new accommodations on Freight Street. Just these are a few key points that we've heard throughout from a very large number of people that we've heard from so far. Another way that we've had the public participate in this process is through an online survey that Mark alluded to in the beginning. Now, this is linked on the, if you haven't taken it yet, please do. It's going to be open for the duration of the study as we go through our study alternatives. But as of right now, we've gotten, I didn't update the number here, we've gotten 108 respondents as of about an hour ago. And we ask questions. There are 17 questions. It takes roughly 5 or 10 minutes for someone to take this. And like I said, this survey just really adds more content to what we've already received from public meetings like this, and the interactive map, and the stakeholder interviews. So one of our key questions here is the same question that we asked all of you in the beginning is, how do you travel? Oh no, this isn't the first one that we've asked you guys. This is, how do you travel on West Main Street? And some people travel it every day. We've got some people that travel it 3 to 4 times a week, once a week, or once a month. This was really encouraging for us to see because we've got a good amount of people that use this every day, but it's also people that come through here every once in a while. And that's also good for us to see as people who are using it as a through fare and how we can improve it for them as well. So here is another question is, why do you most often use West Main Street? And we have people choose all and apply. This is kind of what we gave you guys in the beginning. It was a snippet of this. So we live close by, you access businesses and shopping. We have a lot of people that use this as a through fare. We have a lot of people that come through here for commercial reasons, or they just live close by. The next question, I want to see if we can get the polls up and running again to have this question kind of answered live here. Is it popping up for everyone else? There we go, perfect. So this question is going to be, what are the biggest challenges facing the West Main Street area? I think you're only going to be able to select one on this, so kind of select your most pressing. There's traffic congestion, speeds and safety, sidewalks, crosswalks, bike lanes, on-street parking, off-street parking, bus amenities, and then schedules and frequencies of those buses. Give people a minute to kind of read this and answer. Great, we've got a couple coming in here. It looks like we've got a lot of people on the meeting here that drive through West Main Street. That's kind of what I'm gathering here. We've got people saying that traffic congestion is a problem, speeds and safety is a problem, and then also lack of bus amenities and shelters is kind of what I'm seeing here. So that pretty well matches to what we kind of heard in our, from the 108 people that we've heard from so far. Speeds and congestion is definitely our top 2. And then we've got lack of adequate crosswalks and sidewalks as a near also problem. And then on-street parking is also something that we've heard of as an issue. But I don't want people to look at this and say, oh, well, what about the bus amenities? Those aren't as strongly reflected in the survey, but they are definitely something that we've heard from a lot of you, either on the interactive map that I showed earlier, as well as in our stakeholder interviews. Moving on to the next question here.
Evan, I want to see, are we able to, are these poll results now visible to everybody? Try to give some of the, okay, good, you can.
I would say it looks like Michael's shaking his head, yep.
Okay, good, thanks.
Thanks for posting that. So then our next question brings us to which of the following would make you feel more comfortable walking along West Main Street? We had a lot of people here say lighting, a lot of people here say flashing beacons to kind of that, both of those things kind of aid to the visibility of pedestrians. And this kind of tells us that people would feel more comfortable walking along West Main Street if they were more visible on West Main Street. And that can also go hand in hand with the pedestrian. There's quite a few pedestrian improvements that Matt will share later in our solutions toolbox that can kind of help us make that more of a reality here on West Main Street. And our last question here is, where do you find a shortage of parking on a regular basis? Parking was another thing that was brought up to us very early in this study as something that it is a problem for people who are on West Main Street and kind of wanting to mill around there for a bit, whether they're going to Baroo's or they're shopping downtown or doing something along those lines. People were saying that there were actually quite a few people that said you don't have issues parking on West Main Street, but then most of the people after that said that there were issues in and around the green. At which point Judy Mancini so nicely pointed out to us that the city is about to provide, like Mark outlined earlier, the new surface lot just north of the green on Prospect Street. So that will have access on Prospect as well as North Main. And hopefully that is going to be something that, not as a result of this study, but it's always nice to publicize it a little bit further, that people will be able to park on West Main Street a little bit, hopefully a little bit more than they can currently. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and we're going to go over our solution. So we've given everybody kind of the issues that we've found here, and now let's talk about how we can fix them.
Thank you very much, Catherine. You can go ahead to the next slide. So the purpose of running through is kind of Catherine alluded to these potential solution ideas in our virtual toolbox here is so that we're going to be conducting a little bit of a brainstorming exercise in maybe about 5 or 10 minutes, and we're going to be asking everybody to use these tools in the toolbox and see where you think on the corridor these might apply. And this isn't to say that these are the only things that can be done, but as you're thinking about potential ways that things could be improved, this will be a place to start. So what we're showing here is an example of a 4-lane road, 2 lanes in each direction, no median. And this is it's an inefficient road. It's a dangerous road. This is an example from a study that we've worked on similar to this one in the past. And if we go to the next slide here, you'll get a sense of what could potentially happen. And in this case, this is what they're building out there, is something very similar to this. We're showing kind of a red painted median in this section. In all likelihood, for the majority of this stretch of road that we're showing here, this is going to be a 2-way left turn lane. You wind up with 1 travel lane in each direction. You have now enough room to include bike lanes. And I think actually in this section of the road, they actually were able to fit buffered bike lanes here with a little bit of a buffer to provide some protection from the traffic. You also see street trees here, some pedestrian scale lighting. And when you go from 4 lanes down to 2, it's a lot safer to include a crossing, and you can, it doesn't even have to necessarily be at an intersection. It could be mid-block, what we like to call it. So just some ideas there to get you thinking about how things could change. If you want to go to the next slide. Here's another idea. We're calling this a boulevard concept. You may have this image of a boulevard in your mind, which is, a road with a planted median strip. And, it can be in the lower picture, you can see an example where it's a fairly thin strip. In the upper picture, you can see it's a much thicker one, but again, allows you to provide safer crosswalks across the street. And in areas where you might want to go from, you might not need all the lanes you have, but you also don't really need left turn lanes. This is a pretty good option. And the next tool in our toolbox here, crossing improvements. So kind of touched on these in the first 2 slides, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in conjunction with a road diet. You see in this picture on the left here, this is a way that the 4 lanes total, 2 in each direction, is maintained in that, but the crossing is broken up in such a way that makes it a little bit safer for people to cross. And you can also see in front of those cars approaching, you've got a stop bar there. So this is a scenario where you might have some kind of a signal that's added to provide additional safety for the pedestrians. And then at the in the lower right picture, we're really just highlighting the what we would call a refuge island that's been provided so that you don't have to cross all 4 lanes at once. Gives you a little space to kind of be in the middle and find another gap to cross. Another crossing improvement, a couple ideas here. I mentioned that you could provide a signal to stop traffic and allow people to cross the road. That doesn't just have to be your traditional red, yellow, green. It could also be on the lower right here. You see our high intensity activated crosswalk, often called a hawk signal. You're starting to see more of those popping up around Connecticut, all over the state. This is kind of a step between having a full-blown signal and you know, maybe another option would be the rapid rectangular flashing beacon. So, you know, you might look at it as the full-blown signal, the hawk signal, a little bit less of a control. And now if you go a little bit less from the hawk signal, you get to the rectangular rapid flashing beacon. You may notice these on the sides of the roads. Also a relatively newer treatment in traffic control. Those are the ones, you know, you see the rectangular LED lights that flash back and forth quickly. You know, this isn't like a red light that a vehicle has to stop for, but we do find that there are pretty good rates of improving people stopping for, drivers stopping for pedestrians trying to cross the street. And then on the lower left corner here, you can see how those are 2 rows of parked cars on either side of this 2-lane one-way street. And what's been done here is that instead of just having the sidewalk, the curb line running along those passenger sides of the vehicles, or the driver's side in this case, I'm on the right side of the street, the curb has been brought out in front of those cars where there's no more room to park. And that means that instead of crossing 2 lanes of traffic plus 2 parked car lanes, now folks only have to cross the 2 lanes of traffic. Makes it a lot safer and more comfortable. The next page here, we talk about landscape design. So you can see in the upper left corner here, that's an example of a tree grate that can be installed to help protect street trees. Certainly, we're seeing more and more these days over the last year and a half. Outdoor dining has become a big part of all of our lives. But, you know, it has also been used in the past, you know, to actually help provide some traffic calming in certain places. All these elements, when you're driving down the road, when you see these elements of street trees or roadside dining coming up next to the street, they kind of give you this impression that you need to slow down as you're driving. There's a lot of studies that prove that that's effective. Go ahead to the next slide here. Access management. So this is an example of a pharmacy that's located. This is actually in Meriden on 2 streets. It's on the corner. And this property actually has 9 curb cuts to get into it. Which, you know, that is dangerous, really. And you can see some of these curb cuts are basically in the intersection. And that is not ideal. That's a problem. That creates a problem with access management. So what we like to see, if you want to go to the next slide, this is an example of better access management. This is a large parcel. This is the Walgreens property right on West Main Street. And you can see there's 1 signalized access drive to the left. There's a right turn out only in the center. And then there's a 3rd access that's really kind of, you know, typically used for deliveries that's off of a side street. This provides a ton of street frontage, but doesn't provide all those curb cuts. So that means there are fewer conflict points, fewer chances for people to be entering into the busy stream of traffic and potentially causing a crash, or, you know, having potentially crashing with a pedestrian who's trying to get across the driveway. And in a complex environment, it can be difficult to spot those situations. And the last solution in the solutions toolbox here, bicycle improvements. This has been talked about a little bit previously in the presentation. There are not a ton of bicycle facilities out in this area, but you see in the lower left corner bike lanes. If there's room, that's a great thing. In the upper right corner, you see the Sharrow markings. They're like a reminder that bicycles are allowed to use the full lane of traffic, that is traffic law. In places where you can't fit bike lanes, Sharrows can be useful on low speed roads, but bike lanes are if you build it, they will come type feature. You may not see a lot of bicyclists out there on West Main Street today, but you never know when there's latent demand there on a street where it's dangerous to bike today. So I think that is, or I should say, where it's not comfortable to bike today. So I think that brings us to our third and final poll question, if we want to throw that up real quickly. So if you could add something new to West Main Street, what would it be? This is kind of a fun one to brainstorm. So better bus service, better bike facilities like bike lanes, like I just mentioned, better roads for driving, maybe additional capacity, better traffic signals, improved sidewalks and crosswalks for walking, more street amenities like street trees, lighting, benches, more parking. Got a couple answers coming in here, 3 now, maybe we'll get one more. We see better roads for driving, improved sidewalks and crosswalks for walking, more parking. So, definitely seeing some of that same kind of auto-centric bias here on our answers. So that's a good thing to note. And I don't know if we're going to get I think we've had 4 answers on the first 2 questions. Maybe somebody stepped away from their computer, but we can show what the results are here, and then we can get moving into the next. So you can see that's just what I read out before. So we should. So let's get moving into our activity here. So this is the fun part. You can go ahead to the next slide, Catherine. So we're going to shake this up a little bit. Don't worry too much about what this slide says. This was set up so that we could accommodate a group of any size here tonight. We definitely have a size that we can all be in the same room together, which is quite frankly preferable. So happy to see that. And really what we're looking for, I want to take this opportunity to kind of get to know each other a little bit here. We've introduced the team, and I'll say that there are, we know that there are a number of interested parties in the room who are in the consultant community, who are working on other projects nearby or from the DOT. And we're certainly more than welcoming to those folks. But I was hoping I could maybe call some other people out, members of the community, and maybe we could just get an introduction from you guys to hear more about where you're coming from before we get into our exercise here. So maybe I can call on Michael Salvio to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested.
Yes. Hi, I'm Mike Salvio. I'm an alderman at the city of Waterbury, and I do live close to this area. In fact, I live on Willow Street, quite a ways up past the firehouse, in case anybody is familiar with it. But I do travel a lot of times from north to south, and whether I'm going to alderman meetings or to Judge Ura's grocery store, which is at the south end, or other places. And so I've lived here all my life, so I'm very familiar with the area. And although I like the concept of some of the things you proposed in your toolbox, I just want to focus on one thing. That area, and I put down speeding is a problem. Crossing streets is a problem. And unfortunately, you're only able to choose one point on each of the.
Let's see if did Mike freeze out for everybody else? Yeah, I see some heads. We'll give him a second, see if he comes back in. He was right. He's just about to get in. Okay, Mike, sorry we lost you there. Can you tell us again? Even though you were only able to pick one.
Oh yeah, I do have trouble with my with the computer itself. If I was able to choose more than one, at least 3 of those, which other people in the room did choose, so I feel more comfortable that those other items are being addressed. Great.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So we'll be coming back to you when we get into talking about all the different as we roll through the whole study area, and I have a feeling we'll get some opinions from Mike on the intersection of West Main and Willow and Meadow. So let's keep going around the room here a little bit. Armando Polino, are you at your computer to unmute? Yeah, great. Yeah. Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a resident of Middlebury, but I grew up and spent about 40 years in Waterbury, and soft spot in my heart for it. And I work with 2 clients that own several properties along the corridor and in the downtown that support 500-600 employees and have potential for other development.
Great. Awesome. Well, I'm sure you're going to have a lot to add here as we start. I guess we've kind of alluded to this a number of times. I don't know if anybody's really said it flat out that, we're coming to this study from the perspective, certainly primarily looking at the roadways, but that's certainly not the entire scope of it. And so we're very happy to get comments on, whatever it is that you have on your mind. So thank you and nice to meet you, Armando.
Happy to be here.
And let's see, is Michael Batista, are you there to unmute and give a quick introduction? Great.
Hi, I'm a downtown stakeholder, and I also live in Waterbury, close to the area. So I'm probably driving on West Main Street 6 or 7 times a day, just back and forth. So, I'm very interested in this project.
Perfect. That's awesome. Thank you. And yeah, you're exactly the kind of expert in how things work out here that we're looking for. And then I see there's 2 phone numbers who are called in. There's a number ending in 5904. I know that I recognize some of the names of folks at the DOT or other consultants, but I don't know about the phone numbers. That's a tougher one. And then I also see there's a number ending in 5638. If either of you want to unmute and give an introduction, we'd love that. Just to try to get as many voices into this as we can. I don't see those unmuting, so we'll go ahead and carry on. Mike, Armando, and Mike, we're definitely going to be leaning on you guys to get your opinion on all these things. So please consider yourself all on the spot here. But anybody else too from the consultant community or even our own team, this is a great time to shout out your comments and get them on the record here. So, Catherine, you want to? Oh, go ahead.
Matt, I just wanted to add that you can press, I guess it's *6 if you're on the phone, if you want to, and they do want to unmute, just in case they don't know.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't mention that. So yeah, if that was holding you up, and you're one of the people on the phone, if you want to hit *6 to unmute, feel free to interrupt at any time to introduce yourself. We'd be grateful to hear from you. All right, so let's go ahead with the next slide here, which I think is going to be, so just some ground rules. I don't think that we really need to worry too much about this, this is certainly, some of these public meetings we do can be a little bit contentious, but I get the sense that everybody's going to be on the same page and working together tonight. So I don't think we need to linger here. Go ahead to the next slide. So go ahead to the next slide. The other thing I want to mention here is that the project team is going to be taking notes on all the stuff we talk about, and we'll be talking about, we'll bring that back to you at the end. So I guess, Catherine, do you want to just share a Google map here to go through the sections? We split our quarter up into 4 sections to kind of help us identify, help us break them into pieces so we have manageable chunks. So of those 4 sections, we'll just, so you're not listening to me yammer on the whole time here, Mark Bertucci's gonna jump in and talk about the western 2 sections, and then I'll pick up on the eastern 2 sections, and we'll be taking notes on all the input that we get, and then we'll review all that at the end to close out. So go ahead, Mark.
All right, thanks, Matt. So yeah, I thought, since we're getting a small enough group here, we'll kind of just start in the west end of the road at Route 8, and we'll just kind of head east, and just hear any thoughts or comments you might have on issues you see and types of solutions you think could help traffic flow better, safer, make things safer for pedestrians, bicyclists, maybe spot for transit facilities, amenities that would be good. This western section here, begins, like I said, at Route 8. If you zoom in, Catherine, at the intersection there with Freight Street. So this road was recently connected as part of the Tiger project. And Google imagery recently has been updated, and I think it now shows, yeah, there it is. It shows the new tie-in point. So nice connection to have, but it is a busy spot where this road comes out. I believe there's a left turn restriction that has been installed. Has anybody driven through this yet? Has anyone used Freight Street? Do you have any comments or observations on how this is working thus far?
Mark, just a quick thing. This is Jackson Street.
I'm sorry, Jackson Street.
That's okay. We're talking about Freight Street.
I had Freight Street on my mind. It connects to Freight, right? Yep.
Yep. I wanted to orient everybody. This is Jackson Street.
Thank you for correcting me, but Jackson Street. Yeah, Mike or Armando, or I think we got 2 mics on. I know you mentioned, Mike Batista mentioned you drive through this pretty regularly, 6-7 times a day. Have you seen any issues with people pulling out here? Or,
yeah, it's starting to, now that it's gotten warmer, it's starting to cause more traffic, definitely, in that area, especially during the peak times.
Right. Do you see vehicles backing up here in this area? Thomaston signal.
There was an accident there also too recently, and it does back things up.
Mm. Where was the crash? Was it at this intersection or further down?
Yeah, it was right at this intersection. Well, they were turning from Jackson Street onto West Main. Ah,
so they were going left out?
Yeah.
So that exactly, that's something we heard. There is a sign there that they restrict no left turns. But as you can see from on the screen here, there's really nothing physically preventing you from making that left turn out. Which really, that somebody pulls up there and they want to get on Route 8, they're not gonna, make a right and go all the way around or turn around. They're gonna try to make that left turn. So this was something that was brought up in our advisory committee meeting, and I think we're going to be looking at something here, maybe a physical, you know, an island or something geometric that might help, you know, or deter people from making that illegal left out. There's also a bus stop here, and pedestrians. You know, there's been observed pedestrians trying to cross in this area. There's no marked crossing. So you know, this is going to be, as we begin, you know, start heading from west to east, this western section here, this is going to be a focal point around this intersection where I think we need to look at maybe a bus pull-off, better pedestrian crossing accommodation, and you know, looking at the safety of Jackson Street and those illegal left turns that I'm not surprised to hear are occurring.
Yeah, and then also going toward the highway, the right, what is it, the right turn only to go toward Route 8 North, that is always a problem where people just sit there to go straight, and that backs up traffic. So when you couple Jackson Street and that together, it could really get bad over there sometimes.
You spin around, Catherine, I'll take a look at the other direction quickly. So this is what he was talking about here. So you're saying the right turn lane is what backs up as you head out towards Route 8?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and we heard some things earlier meetings as well about that, and how the alignment doesn't work work great there. So you know, the DOT is working on a project in this area. I'm not sure if John Dean's still on, but you know, we've taken note of that, and something we may be able to, you know, coordinate with that project, the mixed master project, to you know, maybe clean things up a little bit there. There was a recent restriping of that road, but it seems like there's still issues.
Yeah, what you're finding now too is that if you're making a left onto Jackson Street, so now I'm coming up behind you, I get into the right lane to try to go around you, and I end up getting stuck in that lane too sometimes. So it's, you know, I see people where that happens to them, and they end up just going straight and then causing traffic there. So it's really tricky. Okay.
Hey, Mark, this is Judy. I just want to clarify, coming out of Jackson Street, that section of West Main Street is a state road. So we had to work through District 4 on our project to get direction on how they wanted the signage and everything to be coming out from Jackson Street onto West Main Street. So anything we would do there would have to be in coordination with the Department of Transportation, just as an FYI.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mentioned earlier, the western section of this is all state designated road. So fortunately, you know, we've been having project advisory committee meetings, and we have representatives from the DOT who have been sitting in on those meetings and providing some good information to help inform the study. So yeah, thanks, Judy, for that. Okay, if there's anything else on this section, you know, certainly let us know, but if not, let's kind of pan to the east a little bit, Catherine, and we'll talk about, you know, that's Thomaston Avenue, and then the little shopping plaza there with the Walgreens. You know, a couple things we saw with this section, we use this as an example of good access management on the south side of the road with the Walgreens Plaza. But you look up on the north side, you know, there's quite a few curb cuts, or, you know, by curb cut, I mean where a private driveway comes out onto the street. You know, I'm counting at least 4 or 5 on the north side there, east of Thomaston, and maybe another 4 or 5 to the west. So access management, as Matt presented earlier, is something where we look for ways to maybe consolidate curb cuts and have less points where vehicles are turning out. Usually provides for safer traffic operations. So, you know, that's something that we're going to be looking at, making some recommendations on the access management front in this area. And we've heard in other meetings on Thomaston Avenue, there's some pretty lengthy queues, or, you know, vehicle stacking. You can kind of see it in the aerial here. It goes back to Commercial Street, but a street view even shows it all the way back to Sperry Street and the railroad overpass in a couple of the images. And there it is, Catherine's bringing that up. So, you know, I'm guessing the Google truck went through here maybe late afternoon when people are heading back towards the highway. And you know, that's a pretty lengthy queue all the way back to the overpass. So this is an area where, you know, I talked about before, you know, roadway capacity. It looks like we need the lanes that are here to keep traffic moving. So it's going to be harder to do a road diet like what Matt presented and taking away lanes in this section. I think it's going to be difficult to do. But as we head further east, we'll see that, you know, that's fair game as we head towards closer to the green. Anyone else have any other you know, comments on other than what I brought up in this area, some congestion queuing and access management? Any other observations in this section?
I agree with you. You should not have any diet roadway in this area. We need all the lanes that have to be there because people will make their own lane. The other thing is that not access to Walgreens, the one closer to Thomaston Avenue, that's fine. That has a traffic light. But that other one where you can leave the Walmart Plaza and go on to West Main it's a small one-laner, and it is very dangerous. And I don't know if it's just because there are trees and bushes that obstruct vision. If you're in that lane ready to go out, and you can't see, there's a bit of a curve, as you notice, and you can't see the axis or the cars coming towards you going towards the green. It was pretty congested, and I don't think that's been cleared out lately. So yeah. I like the multi-axis and leaving, but I'm afraid that one could be a crash section right there.
Yeah, I can see how the sight line may be bad looking to the left there because the curvature of that road, the road curves, and you had people, you know, when you were zoomed back around the other way, Catherine, if you had people that were parked in the plaza there, see where that van is? You get a couple of cars parked there in the curvature of the road, and you're going to have difficulty seeing around them to the oncoming traffic. And then throw a pedestrian in there to boot, and it's not a good mix. But okay, that's good. That's something we haven't heard before as a sight line from that driveway. So that's something that we can look at potentially with this plaza owner and the parking spaces there that could be blocking that sight line.
Mark, something else that I'd be interested to hear someone's feedback on is, I wanted to zoom over here, and this turned out to be good for what Michael wanted to talk about, but this is where we got that screen grab for the pedestrian crossing right here. We've got a lot of people who drive this corridor. We also had people that answered the polls that said, we're looking for some crossings. I want to actually pan out here for 1 second. So there's a crossing, you can cross over here at Thomaston Ave, but then the next crossing, and we'll get to this section in a minute, but I just want to outline, the next crossing really isn't until we get to the Apple Motel. That's the next crosswalk. Is there a crossing in this area in particular, kind of before you get to the railroad bridge, that would be helpful? Or have you seen people cross? Like that pedestrian was like probably right about here, just off of Commercial Street. Have you seen people crossing there? Would there be a good spot that you think a crosswalk would belong somewhere around here?
Yeah.
I know I drive West Main Street, and I've definitely seen pedestrians trying to cross, people that use that plaza, go to the Walgreens, and then try to get across to wherever they're going. So there's definitely an area there that should be open for some sort of cross, especially if it's going to be a lot of pedestrian traffic and they're using that area to get back and forth across the street. So I think it'd be good to have a spot there myself.
Yes, I agree. Also, it's too long of a span, and people will just cross anywhere if there's no designated cross area.
Yep. Yeah, so, you know, if there's one crossing at Thomaston, there's nothing west of there. And as Catherine said, there's nothing east of there. You through Commercial, Sperry Street, all the way to the Apple Motel. That is a long stretch of road with only one crossing. So we'll be looking at some of the, probably some of the, you know, crossing features that Matt presented. Maybe a rectangular flat, rapid flashing beacon, you know, the signs with the flashing lights and push buttons on them. And it could be a good application there. And as Judy said, you know, we got to talk to DOT about this, but yeah, you know, we'll definitely have some locations we'll be making those recommendations. Okay, so moving towards the east, this railroad overpass here is actually, you might not be aware, but it's being redone. It's being redesigned as we speak by DOT. It's a pretty unsightly overpass as it is, and but that whole structure is going to be replaced. So there'll be a nice new bridge there. They're not widening it any, so the width under the road will be about the same as it is today. But some of the things, go ahead.
I wonder if they're going to heighten it so the tractor trailers that try to go through and get stuck under there. We've had a lot of that. I'm only kidding, obviously, but it's been happening. There's been quite a few over the years. Truck drivers misjudging the height of the trestle, and they get their truck stuck there, crash into it, to damage it. They have to deflate the tires just to move it out of the way. And I know that nothing could be done there.
Yeah, it looks like we froze it again there, Mike. But John Dean, I see you're on. Do you know if they are raising the height of that? John Dean from DOT is on. If they're raising the height of that overpass?
From what I remember looking at the plans, I don't think they are. I can, if you just give me a minute, I can jump in there real quick and see.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I looked at them, but I was looking at it more from the perspective of, are they widening West Main under it? And I wasn't paying attention to the overhead clearance, but I see from those signs, 12 feet, 10 inches, that is not a lot. That's for a truck, tractor trailer. That's not a lot of clearance. So I'm not surprised to hear there have been some trucks that getting stuck under there.
Yeah, one thing to consider when you're raising a rail bridge, you have to kind of chase the grades back quite a distance, because you can't really put too much of a grade on there. But just give me 1 second. I'll put an answer in the chat for everybody to see.
Yeah, sure. No rush. But yeah, that's true. Raising it with a railroad, it's not like a regular road where you can raise a grade pretty quickly. It's like you raise it a foot and you got to chase it back like a mile. I'm exaggerating, but okay. So that's anyway. Some of our other meetings, this bridge has been the subject of some discussion, because with the ability to to replace this unsightly structure, there was some talk of maybe on the other side as you're coming into town, doing something nice, maybe making it more of a gateway entering the city, and maybe some sort of aesthetic feature in the bridge that might make it look a little better. So any comments on this intersection with Sperry Street? This is one that I mentioned at a crash history. It's a very odd angle. The sight lines aren't good. But has anybody seen anything in this area or any ideas of what you would do here?
I go that way often, so I turn onto Sperry Street a lot from there, from coming under the bridge and then turning left onto Sperry Street. They made it a merger, I guess, to push traffic toward the middle of the bridge to avoid what I was talking about with the trucks, but that ends up causing congestion because people don't realize that other people are turning left, so they kind of stay behind them, and instead of just going around. So I don't know if something could be done with that.
The merger, where are they merging? Like coming from the other direction? Is it?
Yeah, there used to be 2 lanes that went under the bridge.
Okay. Yep.
So now it can, pushes it to 1 lane so that you're in the middle of the bridge when you're going underneath it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and then you're seeing
the bus might be blocking it, but there's, oh, you know what? I was going to say there's no indication of a merge here, but I always forget that this large swath of road here is only supposed to be 1 lane.
Yeah, I think it was saying it used to be 2 under the bridge, but now it's kind of striped for 1, and it's 1, further east as well. But from Sperry east, it's just 1 lane in each direction in this section of road. But as you pan around, Catherine, it's pretty wide there. It's 1 lane, but you could easily fit 2 lanes of traffic. Now this section, though, we got on-street parking. It's not something we would be looking at to make this, I don't think, 4 lanes. Just because here we don't need as much capacity. We don't have any signalized intersections. We do want to, as I presented earlier, retain on-street parking because it's at a premium in this area. So what you're really left with here is 2 15-foot travel lanes. So that's wide it's not enough for 2 lanes, but it's too wide for just, really 1 lane of traffic. Something that wide really promotes higher speeds. So I think, this is an area we'd be looking at maybe adding some bike lanes. You could reduce the width of the travel lane and add a bike lane in between the travel lane and the parking lane. That could be an option. Maybe adding some bus pull-offs, some bulb outs, or little curb extensions at the ends of the parking lane, which can really reduce the width for a pedestrian crossing. And that makes it safer for pedestrians to cross. As I presented before, we mentioned before, there's really nowhere for a pedestrian to cross here. So that is, that's definitely something we'll be looking at. But any other, yeah, go ahead.
Jump in. I was going to ask a question of Mike, who said that he travels on Sperry Street a lot.
Yeah.
Mike, do you said you go under the bridge and then up Sperry. You ever come back down Sperry approaching West Main?
Yes.
And is that always to take a right, or do you ever take a left on the West Main as well?
That's always to take a right to go under the bridge. I rarely ever make a left there.
Okay. Yeah, that's something that that we've been looking at in our traffic analysis. Essentially, like what we've been seeing is that during the peak hours, when there's heavy traffic here, it's almost impossible to take a left off of Sperry onto West Main. I just figured, I thought I would ask if anybody has experience with that.
Yeah, especially because I live on Hillside, so if I needed to, I would just go straight down Willow. I would, it's when I'm going to this side of town that I would come this way, or going back home, because you can't make a left on Willow, so I have to go this way on Sperry Street.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, Catherine, why don't we pan east a little bit further? And this is the area. So we finally got to a pedestrian crossing here. This is the first one in a long stretch. And this is near the Apple Motel. This is the area where, although we have a crossing, this is where we had seen the pedestrian fatalities. So a couple issues with this. I think you know, this crossing is not very highly visible. And this is another spot where I think we can look at an actuated device and something that, you know, flashes like a beacon, the RRFB that Matt talked about, maybe even a hawk could be on the table here. We'd have to look at the traffic volume warrants. That's the overhead signal with the 3 heads. But there seems to be a warrant and a need here, safety need with not 1, but 2 fatalities is pretty, you know, horrific in this area in the last few years, you know, relatively recent past. So this is a focus. This will definitely be a focus of ours as we continue to head east. And I think, you know, again, those curb extensions to cap off the end of the parking lanes to shorten that crossing, shorten the exposure times that the pedestrians that are in the road could be very helpful there. You know, heading east, further east, just spin around the road. We widen here again for 2 lanes. So we're out of our 1-lane section. We're widening for 2 again. And this is really for capacity purposes here as we approach this Willow Meadow Street intersection. So, you know, we've got some turns going on here, but with the offset nature of this intersection, as anyone who's driven through this knows, those left-hand turns are prohibited in each of the directions here. So it's the turn prohibitions are really because of the offset nature of this intersection, but you know, at the same time, I'm sure it's restricting mobility. So we've seen from the traffic counts that people are, much like they are coming out of Jackson and making the left, they are making illegal lefts here. So this intersection is problematic, not only from congestion standpoint, as I presented earlier, but from a safety standpoint. There's a lot of crashes here. There's queuing. There is a driveway to that recently closed 7-Eleven that comes out into the middle of the intersection, which is very bad for access management. And we even have a pedestrian crosswalk there that goes diagonally across the middle of the intersection, which is another no-no. So there's the list of bad things about this intersection is quite long. So we've certainly got our work cut out for us here. You know, we've got plenty of things that we need to address. Wondering if anybody on has specific thoughts on this intersection. You know, Mike Salvio, you mentioned you live up the road from here on Willow, so I assume you probably drive through this on a pretty regular basis.
Yes, I do, and I wouldn't recommend trees. I don't even care for that. Well, it's not a wide medium, but with the foliage there, I wouldn't even suggest bike paths. You need that wide space. You need to address the fact that it is the road is offset, you know, and I'm not sure what to do to make it that intersection more safe, but it doesn't need any additional nice things like bike paths or tree lined or a medium with foliage in it. I think it has to be directly deal with traffic, turns, and pedestrian crossings.
Do you think, what do you think about the left-hand turns? You think they should be allowed at this intersection, or?
Well, whether they're allowed or not, they're being done. And I've experienced that every time I go through there. They do turn left at any time, as long as there's no police in the area. And so they're going to do it anyway. If there's a safe way to establish that would be good, you know, because they're doing it anywhere. And I'm sure that's part of the reason for the crashes.
I would agree. I think the left turn prohibitions were as a safety measure, but people are doing them. So I'm sure that's what's causing a lot of turn collisions there.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
They should be allowed safely somehow because they're doing them anyway. And the bus is allowed to turn left from Willow onto West Main too. So their buses can make the turn.
Right. I think that's the case over at by the green too, right? The buses can turn, but traffic can't.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You know, another thing we talked about here is that parcel in the northeast corner. We'd love to see that driveway go away. But yeah, I guess it really depends what goes in there. You know, if the parcel next door were merged with it, whoever goes in, we'd have the option to maybe move that driveway further to the east away from the intersection. And that would certainly be, you know, a safety measure as well. So a couple things there, but we definitely, we got some things to look at this intersection for sure.
And Mark, Armando, just to chime in here on those two parcels, the now closed 7-Eleven and the adjacent parcel that you mentioned, both those property owners had been in discussion about combining the properties to create a one of the newer model 7-Elevens, but because it's within the CBD, they wouldn't be able to bring in the gas station. So the plan was fully abandoned. Right.
Yeah, I had heard that. So, you know, hopefully something else, you know, comes in there that wants to do the same thing. I think the combining of those parcels is really key to making that site more usable and safer with access. So, good. I noticed in the chat, thank you, John Dean, for looking into that railroad overpass, and the plans that are in 60% design by DOT right now are maintaining that same clearance. So as we expected. So, you know, hopefully, you know, definitely need that clearance signage up there. Will be maintained, but you know, hopefully we don't have any more incidents with those trucks going under there. But it is a relatively low clearance. Okay, let's continue east, and Matt, if you want to kind of maybe give a little overview of this section, and we'll get your thoughts on. I like to call this the runway section of our corridor, because you could basically land a plane on this. It's so wide.
I don't want to steal your thunder, Mark. If you want to keep going, you can keep going. Try and give me a break.
That's right.
Yeah. So as Mark mentioned, this is an area of road where even basically, like, so if you start over at the intersection with Meadow and Willow, you're at a solid 5 lanes there. You basically kind of stay at 5 lanes as you're moving over to homes, but you are expanding. And then by the time you make it over to the stop bars with the intersection with the green, you're at 6 full lanes of traffic anyway, plus basically like a wide median. This is really far wider than you would ever want to see a road in a downtown setting. So this is definitely where we're looking at trying to get more creative. So yeah, I mean, you guys drive this every day. I don't know, do you have any thoughts about like, I think, you know, this is kind of one discrete section, basically what you see on your screen here, but it certainly ties in extensively to the way that traffic flow around the green works. So, you know, if you want to touch on circulation, anything like that about this section that comes to mind, presumably, you know, you're not seeing the you know, we've in our traffic analysis with all these lanes, you don't see any kind of congestion really here. So yeah, I mean, this would potentially, we could look at even dedicated bus lanes. This is where you're really starting to see a lot of buses moving through here. That's a potential. Certainly bike lanes, you know, additional street trees, even wider sidewalks. You know, we've spoken with representatives from churches in this area that use the sidewalks certainly as part of their activities. And we've heard that perhaps wider sidewalks would be nice. So I don't know, does anybody want to jump in here to talk about this?
Hey, Catherine, if you could bring up the little section we have here too, that might be helpful. The street mix section
from the presentation. So the one way that we can look at, it can be a little bit daunting to just say, okay, well, I see there's a lot of pavement there, sure, but how am I supposed to know what should go in? So we have a program that we use that kind of gives some additional options on on what things could be like. So here's the section in question, and if you see on the top there, you can kind of see where you have the 2 through lanes in one direction, and these are wide through lanes there, a painted center median, and then three vehicle lanes going in the other direction. So you get a lot of space there to play with. And if you wanted to, this is just a potential configuration. So you can see what we're showing here. We have bus lanes on the curb. Then we have bike lanes, you know, just after the bus lanes. And we still have 1 lane of through traffic in each direction, plus a shared through right turn lane, you know, for the folks heading around the south side of the green, plus a 2-way center left turn lane to allow for people to continue making those left turns. So how about any reactions to this? Is this something that you think would be helpful, or does this look like it's bad?
I think, I'm not sure if there's parking there now, but I think parking would be good there.
Okay, yeah, more parking, sure. We can certainly take that. Yeah, we've heard all up and down the corridor that more parking would be better. So yeah, that is definitely a potential. Great.
Yeah, and that's, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just to point out, so I don't know that all those lanes would be needed, but I think why they're underutilized now is just because of the way the traffic is forced to flow through that area with the restriction on the turns and how you go around the green. I rarely drive in that section just because of how, you know, everything is forcing me to go an opposite way. So that could be why it's not utilized as much as it probably could be.
Evan, can you switch over to the map? And Mike, can you talk us through that one more time about how you're not able to go in the ways that you'd want to go?
Well, if you're coming down Willow Street, you can't
take that left.
Turn left onto this area, right? So that restricts you for there. So now you've got to keep going straight. You go to Grand Street, and then maybe, you know, you circle back around. So I don't think it's being used as a throughway because it's really just not effective as that. So people are forced to go around in different ways.
Yeah, that's great. So you're kind of getting pinched off and you're not even allowed to enter in there, which I think, you know, we certainly aren't trying to avoid having cars go through the downtown by the green. You know, that's a great asset in the downtown. So that's great. Good comment there. So if we were to improve the mobility, like Mark said, at the intersection of Willow and Meadow, making sure that we account for that in our design, you know, upstream, downstream, however you want to look at it, is going to be important.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure of this, but I don't believe you could come south on Central Avenue and make a left turn towards the green there. I think there's a sign that says no left turn. I may be wrong, but or if you are allowed to take the pardon?
I would say you're correct. Yeah, it's a right only out of there. Yep.
Yeah. And that's the Central Avenue is a very busy area where there's doctors, lawyers, offices. There's quite a few things. Yeah, here we are. Yeah, you can't. That's right. See, you cannot. It says you no turn right only, and that restricts people. It's a big wide area. When if you enter West Main, if something could be done there where you are allowed with signs or flashing lights or whatever to turn left, I think that would be a big plus for that particular area.
Great. Yeah.
But it has to be safe. The safety is number one, obviously. Whether in a car or you're a pedestrian.
Great.
And that goes with, if we narrow the road, we take some travel lanes away, maybe the left turn becomes on the table again, because it's a safer movement when you're not crossing as many lanes.
Yeah.
And I can also say from some of our prior conversations, Catherine, if you want to go back to the overhead view, there is not currently the ability to take a left into the church parking lot. If you're heading westbound away from the green, there's no way to turn left into that church parking lot there. If you're doing it legally, you need to kind of circle around the block or something. And that was something that could be potentially combined with the Central Ave mobility to provide a little better access there too. Great. That's great feedback. Okay, well let's push on over towards the green here. We're this is flown by here. We're actually getting close to where we need to do our recap. But so this is kind of, in my opinion anyway, this is the most interesting area that we have to look at because right now you have two-way traffic both sides of the green. You have a ton of turn restrictions. You basically can only go straight, more or less, except for the buses at the intersection of East, West, North, South Main Street. There's just a ton of stuff going on with the buses here. There's a lot. So I won't blather on. If anybody has anything they want to throw out here as ideas about what could be better, interested to hear it. Or perhaps people really like it the way it is. I'm not sure, but I know that some of the things that I'll throw out some of the ideas that we've been kicking around and try to get your reactions on them. Some of the things that we've been talking about, we had a great interview with the Basilica. That was one of the folks that we were talking about potentially having wider sidewalks. They mentioned that they use that north side of the green for parking for when they have funeral services. So that was something that was really important. They also said that can be like a little bit of a tough place to get across the street there. There's a couple crosswalks, but it can be a little dangerous. Kind of seemed like maybe apart from those parking issues, that maybe there was the potential to have this be a little bit more of an expansion of the green almost, you could look at it, or a more pedestrian friendly space on this side of the green, where it could still be used for parking when needed, but wasn't really the primary route for through traffic. Curious to get reactions to that. What do you think, Judy? You like that idea?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I just, you know, keeping in mind that there's going to be a new parking lot on Prospect Street. So if this area could be sectioned off, you know, if it would be sectioned off, let's say to make it more of an expansive area for community events or whatever that would be, just entry to it would be different. I also wanted to mention too, Matt, remember Bob Burns from the Naugatuck Museum had made a couple comments that if you miss that turn there to get to his space, you've got to go all the way up, and you can't even take a turn at south, right? So I just wanted to get people's opinions about, you know, the left turn at East Main, West Main, we're all there. So I just wanted to see, like, Mike Salvio, what do you think about that, allowing left turns over there?
I think there should be with the proper signage and or lights. But one thing I don't agree with, I really wouldn't take away the parking on either side of that strip, on the north side of the green, because as someone said, funerals, weddings, just regular church. I know the Immaculate has a parking facility in the back, but if you go there during Sunday church services or other things, that there's always parking, there's always cars on at the green, you know, and the north side where the basilica is, and the south side where the green is. All those spaces are taken up, and I've seen people driving and like putting their signal on, hoping that someone's going to leave so they can pull in, because they may be handicapped. They may, you know, they may need to be as close to the basilica as possible. So I'm looking at the green as being the place where you're getting all the events and all that. I don't think widening that. Someone had talked about bike lanes on one side, if not both, but at least on one side. And I don't want to reduce the parking there. That's my thought.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that Judy Mancini? Oh my goodness! It didn't. How are you? It didn't click. I'm sorry, I haven't seen her in a while.
Mike, I'm great. How are you? That's the best.
That's our real goal here, is to reunions, facilitate reunions.
Oh, great. That's wonderful. Anybody else here right now? I'm only kidding. I'll mute myself.
I was just gonna say, you know, we want you to think big here, and you know, if parking is really the primary thing that we're concerned with on the north side of the green, I mean, perhaps there's an opportunity to actually have more parking up there, even like on the street, you know, like I'm just totally throwing this out there. This is not something that we have analyzed, but let's say that you made that all one way in one direction, and you were able to have angle parking the entire way on both sides. You know, you might be able to fit in 3 times as many parking spaces as doing it parallel. You know, these are things that are within our ability to kind of dream up and draw. So again, not that you have to come up with it on the spot, but you know how to get in touch with us if just ask Judy, she'll put you in touch with us. Yeah, so any other items on that? We had last couple minutes here. Anybody else, Mike Batista or Armando, want to chime in on this?
At the intersection of West Main and Bank Street, at that area across from the green, I know it doesn't show that there's a bus stop there, but there always seems to be a bus there, and that kind of causes some congestion there.
Okay.
Yeah, where is it? Across from the horse, like in that area.
Right. Oh, right. Okay. Buses are doing pickup and drop off right there, kind of like in front of where that police car is.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. That's something we can certainly, we've had good participation with CT Transit, and we can talk to them about whether, you know, maybe there's a sidewalks kind of wide there. Maybe there's an opportunity for a pull off. I'm not sure. We could certainly look at that. good. Armando, anything else? We got about 12 minutes left, and so we're just about ready to take it into a recap here, if there's no other closing thoughts on this section.
Does anybody have any comments on the monument area there in the west end, where there's kind of, we've got, it's almost like a pseudo traffic circle, but there's certain movements here you can and can't make, and we've heard, as Judy mentioned, if you miss that left turn coming on West Main Street to turn up towards Park Place, you miss it, you got to go all the way around. Does anybody have any thoughts on this? Do people like traffic circles or roundabouts? Not saying we're proposing this, but could you see, something like that here, where you had maybe 4, approaches coming into a circle, or anything else? The sky's the limit here with this intersection. There's certainly a lot of different things we could come up with. Maybe to improve mobility and also make it safer for pedestrians to cross. There's really no area on the south side of the green in this area. If anybody had any thoughts on that, on this particular area and the monument.
Yeah, Judy, do you remember? I don't know if, I don't think it was this group, but someone had proposed extending the green to the monument. In other words, getting rid of that passway in there, and then reconfiguring the turns on the opposite side of the monument. Just closing that off, making that part of the green right up to the monument, and then reconfiguring. What you could see now is that there's a couple of islands, and all the turns that would need to be made in that particular area, and cut off. That entry be in the back of the, I don't know how to explain it, in the back of the monument, but in front of the green itself. Just extend the green to the monument, incorporate it into the green, and then in some way reconfigure all the turns and the traffic on the west side of the monument.
I'm not aware of it. I wasn't part of anything like that, Mike, but I could certainly do some looking into that, and we can get the answer on that. Because
I remember, I just don't remember who, because I remember participating in it, pre-COVID, but it could have been, at my age, it could have been, 5 years ago, never mind pre-COVID. So that's why it's so foggy in my mind, but someone had proposed it. I just can't remember. Who?
I'll do a little looking around, Mike, and see what I can find out. And I know how to reach you.
Yeah, yes, you do. That you do.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
That is a great point, though, because that monument is completely separated. You can't. It's a beautiful monument, but the pedestrian can't get to it to access it or look at what's the writing on it or anything, because it's all surrounded by traffic lane with no crosswalk. So. That's a good point. We'll look into that.
Great. Cool. Well, we just have a couple minutes left here before 7. So maybe we can get into a recap of what we heard, and just we want to show you our notes so you all can see what we've been doing on Catherine's other screen here. We've been kind of trying to keep track of all of these comments. You can see they're broken up into the 4 different sections, and we've basically included, we've listed what we would call problems on the blue notes and potential solutions on the yellow notes. So you don't have to squint too hard to read all of them, but I'll just very quickly kind of summarize these, and I'm not going to do every last one, but just to get some of these refreshed a little and make sure that we didn't miss anything. So at Jackson Street, we noticed that the left turn sign doesn't stop people from making left turns. There's some crashes out there. Potential solution would be to make some geometric changes, and that would need to be coordinated with the DOT. We also kind of near Jackson Street, but actually closer to Route 8, we see cues that are, you know, interfering with turning movements related to the westbound right turns. And we know that there's a DOT project going on in that area, so we'll definitely coordinate with them to make sure we are doing whatever we can to help alleviate that. There's nowhere for people to cross the street at the fish market, so bus pull-offs and maybe a better crosswalk there would help. We heard that it's, you know, too congested for a road diet there. Also that people are making their own lanes. You know, a potential solution there is that there's better definition about where the lanes are, you know, where people should be driving, and, you know, just better definition out there is really, could potentially help with that. So no good crossings at Commercial Street. Just catch a couple more here at the Walgreens. Also, there's potentially issues with the sight line there, so maybe restricting parking or adding a crosswalk would help. So that's what we have from the first section. And feel free to just unmute and interrupt if you want to add something. But and then as we get to the other side of the railroad pass, approaching Meadow and Willow, you know, we heard that sometimes there's issues with trucks getting stuck under the bridge, and just the bridge generally is kind of not in great shape. So obviously we're working with John Dean over at the DOT on this. You know, maybe some better aesthetic treatments could be helpful there. Something to make this better in that area. The lanes merge into one lane going under the bridge going west. So that's certainly the lanes are something that we'll be taking a close look at. And generally we heard that this might not be the best section for trees, bike paths, all that, those kind of like softer amenities, but that improving traffic conditions should be the priority here. Also, as you get closer to the intersection of Meadow and Willow, you see illegal left turns are happening all the time there. So, you know, might make more sense to actually allow those left turns to happen safely. And the buses also do it. And then, you know, the property on the corner where the closed down 7-Eleven is, the CBD zone prevents certain types of development. So it's certainly possible that there's something else that can be done with that property, you know, make better use of it. I want to go down to as Mark calls, the runway section. And, you know, potentially we have the ability to, you know, make different uses here. But you know, there's perhaps some of why this section's underutilized could be the ability to get there from other parts of town. Also heard that the Central Ave right turn only restrictions, right turn only restrictions are a problem. So that's something that we'll definitely look at, maybe have the ability to remove some lanes, make those left turns out of Central Ave a little bit safer. Circulation around the green, if we address that, could also help this area. Also, you know, coordination with the church is going to be a good thing here. And then as far as the green goes, you know, there's limited parking on street, perhaps better parking on the north side of the green could help. Circulation issues, we're generally seem to be fans of the idea of left turns in that area where they're currently restricted. Bus stop on both sides of North Main on the east side of the green. West Main and Bank always causing bus stop there, causing backups across from the Horse. Could potentially accommodate a pull off there. And we potentially like bike lanes, but not at the expense of on-street parking. Yeah, and the Monument circulation turn restrictions, perhaps extending the green out to the Monument could be useful. So that's our summary there of our brainstorming session, all wrapped up into 4 minutes or whatever that was. So Mark, do you want to take over for some next steps here?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Catherine, if you can go back to the final slide of our presentation, I just wanted to explain where we're going next with this project. So this is our overall schedule. So we're in April now, and we started this back in the fall. And we've, as I mentioned before, we've done a substantial amount of public involvement thus far. We are approaching the end of our data collection, existing conditions analysis phase. So we're going to have a little summary report of all our findings that we'll be issuing soon. And then we're going into next, as we get into May and into June, into our alternatives analysis phase. So this is where we're gonna take all of your recommendations we've heard here tonight and the other public involvement sessions we've had. Look at our findings from our existing conditions analysis, and we're going to come up with solutions. We're going to be drawing up plans and concepts and some alternatives. And then come June, we will have another round of public info meetings, and we'll present to you what our findings are and what are, some of our alternative plans, and get your thoughts on those and what you think might work and what maybe is not so much of a good idea. We'll be definitely communicating when that next meeting will be. And we certainly hope that everyone who attended this and the first meeting will join us for that third and final meeting and get some thoughts on what we come up with. And hopefully we can get the word out and spread the word and have a larger turnout for that meeting, which would be great. Again, you can keep track of where we are with this study on our project website, westmainstudy.com. Also, we're on Facebook there and on Twitter, the NVCOG account. We're constantly updating those, with updates on the project. So is there anything else I missed, Leslie, we wanted to say before we wrap it up?
Just to let everyone know that this was recorded, so we'll put it up on our YouTube channel, which I'll post on. I can try to post right now. I just have to, maybe, I don't know if Rich can post the link to that in the chat, but I can also, we can put that on the website and on, so that everyone could, if they want to watch this again.
Right.
Yeah, we can link those on we can link that on the Facebook page too. I did just put in the chat for everyone the link to the Facebook page as well as the project page. So as Mark mentioned, those will be good ways to keep track of the progress for this project and see when our third and final meeting will be for this.
Right. Great. Well, it's 7 o'clock, and so yeah, thank you again. We really appreciate you for spending the time with us this evening, and it's great to have the input and to help us inform this project. And hope everyone has a good night, and hope to see you again in a few months.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Take care. Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Yep. Bye now.